Power on.
Now entering the gaming grid. The latest gaming news, reviews, and retro culture, as only the man of tomorrow can deliver. And here's your host, Brian Sovereign.
Woo! It is time for the gaming grid, that time of, I don't want to say the month, but that time, whenever that time comes, where I actually, more or less get to be happy about shit. Because I love video games, goddammit, and there's still so many great things to talk about happening in video gaming, though I will admit, see, because when I do my other show, Sovereign Tech, often that's been a depression fest as late. Not always, but a lot of times it is. This is a show where I get to have fun and get excited about hardware. But I must admit that not all of this show is going to be, sunshine and rainbows, as Rocky would say. There is going to be, well, we're going to get into some things, but I guess we might as well open this baby up. Again, a lot of stuff to cover in this episode. In fact, we're going to do there was an interesting list of, it came out from GameSpot. It was the 90s console games that you have to play again right now. Now, of course, when anybody does a listicle like that, which is an article with a list, that's really just designed, like tailor-made. Its purpose is to just get people talking. That is the whole reason that they do that. There's no, and I mean, credit to GameSpot. They didn't even bother, ranking them or anything like that. They just kind of laid them out. But I want to cover some of it. Is it accurate? Are there other ones really that maybe you hadn't thought of that you should be playing? And does that have an overall point to begin with? But you know what? Before we get into any of that, again, there's other news to get into. Well, while we're talking about 90s gaming, the PlayStation Classic, which was really, and we've covered it many times over the past year on the gaming grid, we were very excited, myself included. I mean, lots of people, lots of gamers were excited that this is going to be a resurgence of getting that opportunity to play some 90s classics, including ones that are going to end up on that list later. It ended up, the system just ended up being, let's just call it a piece of shit. I mean, and not worthwhile at all. And what was it originally selling for? Like $100? In fact, I remember I had that pre-ordered. Fuck, am I glad that I canceled that pre-order. And part of the reason why is that now, as of July 2019, which now we're in August of 2019, the PlayStation Classic can be had for the low price at Best Buy and Amazon of $20. Hilarious. A fifth of the price of the original asking price. Is it worth it at $20? You're asking the man of tomorrow, do you think that this is the golden price to get it at? No, it's still not worth $20. Maybe $5 or $10? It's not worth it. I mean, all right, here, wait, let me break this up. Let me break this down. If the controllers had the DualShock sticks on them, then it would probably be worth $20 because you're going to spend $20 just on one controller with a USB port that would have, that would have those DualShock sticks and would be a quality controller. I think then it would be worth that. But because they're not the DualShock controllers, oh, fuck no. No. Not worth it at all. And as far as what if I use it as as a hack station, where I put it, I hack it and I put on my own games and everything, it's still not worth it, partly for that DualShock controller situation, but also because the emulator that it's running is a shit implementation of a great emulator that you can just run on your PC. Now, this kind of argument doesn't always hold water, okay? Because, yeah, you can have an emulator that does a great job for your Super Nintendo games, right? But then I also argue that it's worthwhile to get a SNES Classic. Why? Because there's an overall presentation, there's a crafting, there's unique features that the software itself, the presentation software of the games, also you get Star Fox 2, which granted you can get the ROM of the SNES Classic version of Star Fox 2, and play it on anything that you want. But you're getting such a great presentation, and great controllers and the ease of use and all that, that I really think that the SNES Classic is worth it. Now, to keep in perspective, I was just looking up prices for finding a SNES Classic on Amazon, and they're pushing $200. Now, you get to that $200 range, in my opinion, you're better off getting an analog Super NT and, just having a pair of Hyperkin controllers with that. They're Hyperkin Scout, good wired controllers. And also, once you put on a custom firmware on the analog Super NT, which is the premium Super Nintendo replica console from the company Analog. Once you put I guess they call it jailbroken firmware, but, custom firmware on there, you can play games from all kinds of systems. I mean, I think an Analog Super NT and because the emulation on that is phenomenal, okay, that gives you a lot more options than just your stock, SNES Classic, okay? And the emulation is still fairly solid. So that's where I think, because the SNES Classic is in that price range, I think it's actually more worthwhile to get an Analog Super NT. But regardless, a PlayStation Classic at $20, I mean, it's fucking laughable. In fact, my dear friend, Rob Freebeard, he shared this with me, and I was just like, oh, fucking A. Like, look at that, Rob. He said that, and he said that to me. He's like, look at this. And I mean, again, it's not worth it at all. I'd rather you spend $20 on getting like some rare PlayStation games or something. I mean, the best way really to play PlayStation games, PS1 games especially, isn't even an emulator on your PC. In my opinion, the best way to do it is to just have a PlayStation 2, and have it soft modded with FreeMcBoot and, load up the games through that. And that is still emulation, more or less, but regardless, I think that's the best way to go, because you get a lot more options when you do that through a modded PlayStation 2. But just putting it out there that this thing, I mean, it can't even sell at $20, as to where, amazingly, Nintendo's classic or retro consoles, mini consoles, are selling for multiple times their actual value. Because no, it wasn't there. It was like $60, right, for the NES Classic and for the SNES Classic. But I mean, they're selling for at least double that, as to where the PlayStation Classic is selling for a fifth. Now, I got to tell you, this does not bode well, in my opinion, for what I had thought would happen, which would be that there would be different versions of the PlayStation Classic. Like, there'd be a JRPG version, there'd be, I don't know, a fighter version, or that we would eventually get a PS2 Classic. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think Sony's probably sweating balls about this. I mean, and because they've got to be losing. Well, actually, you know what? They're probably not losing out on too much money, because I bet this is just about $20 worth of hardware. They did nothing special for the software, so it's not like a whole ton of money was spent there. They used an open source emulator, for fuck's sakes, that anybody could develop for or use themselves, without a PlayStation Classic. Unlike the distance that Nintendo very clearly went with their mini consoles, and which would appear also that Sega is going. In fact, the new trailer for the Sega Genesis Mini looks amazing, and really, that is a system to get your hands on. So anyway, we can shift up from that, just bringing that up, and it's just so funny. I mean, this is, you want to talk about a dead system. That's a dead system. We're going to talk about a dead system later, or a quote-unquote dead system later, but the PlayStation Classic, that is fucking dead. That is DOA, and I don't mean dead or alive. I mean dead on arrival, baby. Anyway, so let's shake it up. Actually, speaking of things that are available for pre-order, the Switch Lite, which we talked about quite a bit on the last episode of the Gaming Grid, and actually the episode previous, I believe. But the Switch Lite is finally up for pre-order in the United States. Upon announcement, it was up for pre-order in the UK and other territories, but now it is up for pre-order in the United States. You can pre-order it on Amazon. There's no bum rush. There's no limited amount of hardware here. Obviously, Nintendo expects this to do exceptionally well. They want it to be out there and bought up at the $199 price point for the holiday season, for Christmas and Hanukkah and all of the above. I mean, they want that there. So this is not a situation like the aforementioned NES Classic or SNES Classic. This is, going to be there ready to go. So, but if you want to pre-order it, make sure you're getting it on launch day. Yeah, go for it. I pre-ordered one off of, the gray one, actually, off of Amazon. So that will be on its way to me. That's going to have some bearing on the Switch will have some bearing on conversation, going a little bit forward. But I probably, just to let you know, I won't be doing an episode of Gaming Grid. I mean, I can do them whenever I want, but at the very least, don't expect an episode of the Gaming Grid until after. That comes out on September 20th. The Genesis Mini comes out on the 19th. I'll probably do a huge review show of both the Genesis Mini and the Switch Lite at the end of September. So expect the Gaming Grid for September to come then. Maybe I'll do another episode beforehand, but expect that episode to drop where it's going to be 2 major reviews for that. I mean, I'd like to do other Gaming Grids because there's some games I would really, really love to review right now and talk about. In fact, I had a lot of people ask me, whoa, what's this Thrill Kill game? And I'd love to play Thrill Kill again. It's been a long time since I've rocked it. I'd love to play that again and give you actually like a full review on it, because this is one of those games. I mean, it was basically done. It just never came out for PlayStation. It's a fighting game. It was supposed to be a big deal because it had, it could work with the multi-tap, so you could have 4 players at once fighting, which is a really cool thing. We might actually mention something about that later on in the episode. But a full review of this game, and I mean, the reason this game didn't get released, well, there was crazy shit going on with the studio that was making it and getting bought out. But then basically who bought them out said, whoa, this is way too adult for our blood. We are not going to jump on this. We're not going to release this. And, even though the game was done, it just kind of, fizzled out, even though I think there are advertisements and all this stuff. But it is a done game, and you can find ISOs of it. You can even buy it from some of the retro... Boy, what should I call these people? I love these little stores on Etsy that sell retro reproductions. How about that? Retro reproductionists for gaming. You can get it from them and they work beautifully. So anyway, especially if you have a PS2 with Free McBoot, because it was a PlayStation 1 game. But moving on from that, so the Switch Lite's out there. Go ahead, get your hands on it, do your thing. The one thing I was curious about is, can the Switch Lite handle the GameCube controller? Not that it matters, because you have a dedicated D-pad on it. I'm not sweating too much the playing Super Smash Brothers Ultimate on there, but that is something that crossed my mind. Anyway, moving on from that, we got an interesting so we talked about pre-orders, the fact that the PlayStation Classic is basically is as meaningless now, is more meaningless than it already was, and you couldn't even, in fact, you probably, literally, I think if somebody handed me one, I wouldn't take it. I have limited, space in which, I would allow consoles to take up space in my life anyway. But, I mean, you literally could not give me one, and I would take it. Because what? If you buy them new for $20, you can't just go resell, you're not going to resell them on eBay. Like, what's the fucking point? So, this system's just so shot. So anyway, want to get into another conversation here, actually a very interesting one. Got a couple things to say about this, frankly, but if you don't mind, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a good long while. I am going to have a sip of some coffee. I got to keep going here. There you go. You never really want dead air, but you got some. So anyway. So this is a release of a series of games. Actually, speaking of games from the 90s that like everybody should fucking play, we're going to mention those console games later on. A game that often ties or at least vies for top spot for me of all time. If we were talking console games, I would probably say this is the greatest console game of all time. And I know people are going to think it's ridiculous, but you'll have to hear me out on it. As far as like overall games, be it on PC, console, whatever, I think TIE Fighter, Star Wars TIE Fighter, will always be number one, will always take the cake. And the only thing that's ever going to beat it will probably be some kind of remaster, but then really it's just a remaster, right? But if I were to say just for console games, the number one game of all time, in my opinion, would probably fall to WWF, and well, now it's WWE, but at the time it was WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role. This was the sequel to the first SmackDown game on PlayStation, on the PlayStation 1. And this series has gone on for a good while now. I lost count of how many games there are. They used to, eventually they started, like, they turned it into, instead of just SmackDown, then, they put like SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain would be the title of it. Then it turned into SmackDown versus Raw. Then they started putting a year on it. And then eventually it just turned into WWE 2K whatever year, just like any other, like, NBA 2K20 or 2K19, blah, 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 by 2K games. That's eventually what this series really morphed into, even though it has become so much more than the very simple little brawler, but clever brawler. And, that SmackDown, the SmackDown series originally was, particularly like SmackDown 2, like I said, was one of the greatest. It is, in my opinion, definitely the greatest console game of all time. And just to prove my point, if you go to like Cool ROMs, and a lot of these sites where you can get various, even disc images of classic games from PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and so on, SmackDown 2 will be in just about every top 10 download list on there. I know there's people who would say Final Fantasy VII is better, or they go down whatever list of some conventional picks that they would have, they would say that they're better. But the fact that that wrestling game, so old, is still so heavily downloaded to this day, I think proves my point of just how fucking amazing that game was. You could get, just in the create a character, you could get lost in that game literally for hours on end. I can remember nights where I didn't even sleep, and I wasn't even wrestling with the character. I was just going through the create a character, customizing them, setting up their move list and everything. I mean, it's so deep. There's no RPG. There's no game that was at the time, that was as remotely as deep with how you could customize it as SmackDown 2 was. I mean, now, you have your Elder Scrolls, you have all these other games where you can customize people seemingly endlessly. But SmackDown 2, just a simple wrestling game, was well ahead of the curve on that and was doing it the best in its day. And it's still a worthwhile play because the controls are so simple. Anybody can pick it up and rock it. It's pretty amazing. No pun intended on the rock there. Anyway, WWE 2K20, the latest entry into that game series, has just been announced. It's coming out October 22nd, 2019. It is available for pre-order on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and, well, I'll just stop there. But that kind of brings us to the point. Now, I could talk about the game a little bit itself, but there is an interesting thing in the press release, in the announcement from 2K Games, and I'm going to read it here, okay? Actually, I'll read this whole first paragraph. 2K, which is 2K Games, today announced current Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch and WWE Superstar Roman Reigns, as the cover superstars for WWE 2K20, the forthcoming release in the flagship WWE video game franchise. Lynch and Reigns will serve as ambassadors for WWE 2K20's worldwide marketing campaign, Step Inside, which invites players to enter the world of WWE and face a variety of new and exciting challenges in the virtual ring. WWE 2K20... Well, all right, before I read the next sentence, let me say this. Okay, I love it, and they're making a huge deal out of the fact that with this game, this is the first time that a woman has been the cover of a game. I would have been more impressed if they didn't have Roman Reigns at all for two reasons. One is that means just Becky Lynch would be on the cover, and just a woman would be on a cover, and you're going to have to sell it on I guess on those merits, because they're making a big deal out of it, so I guess that's a merit. Two, Roman Reigns is a bane on the existence of the wrestling world. And, well, I kind of commented in a recent Sovereign Tech during the review of Hobbs and Shaw, which for whatever goddamn reason, I mean, I know the reasons, but Roman Reigns is in that. This guy's so horrible. He sullies the cover of this game, in my opinion, with his presence. But Becky Lynch, the man, that's her moniker, I mean, she definitely brings it gravitas and grace. I'll certainly, and a lot of attitude, fucking right. But anyway, so whatever, that's the thing, but that's not really what I'm here to talk about. Let me read this next line to you, and you tell me what stands out. WWE 2K20 is currently scheduled for worldwide release on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019 for the PlayStation 4 computer entertainment system, no Switch edition here, folks, but reading out in the sentence, and the Xbox One family of devices, including, now there's a comma, including the Xbox One X and Windows PC. the comma, the placement in that. Now, commas are a very big deal in a sentence, right? Because that can tell you what something means and what something is getting referenced, what's the subject, the object, and so on within a sentence. The way that this is written, unless they forgot a comma, so it says, like what this could say is, so it'll be released for the PlayStation 4 computer entertainment system and the Xbox One family of devices, comma, including the Xbox One X, then put another comma, and Windows PC, treating Windows PC as the separate gaming platform that it is. But that's not what they did. There's no comma there. So basically, this press release is calling Windows PC part of the Xbox One family of devices. Basically, what this is suggesting, and if you follow me on Twitter, you saw me talk about this, basically what this is suggesting is that Windows PC is really just a glorified Xbox. And I think that that's actually, now, the aforementioned Robin Freebeard, my brother, he actually he responded to my tweet and made a great point, and I'll read it here, because when I shared about this, I basically said, well, you're all fucking gamers now. I mean, every one of you, because if a Windows PC is really just an Xbox One device, yeah, really, what does that fucking say? But here's what Rob had to say about it. He says, I think that has to do with the announcement of their streaming service, which is xCloud, right? And Xbox Game Pass for PC at E3. I wouldn't be surprised if next year they expand it to mobile, which Stanley breaking in. As far as I know, they are doing that. I got the impression they're aiming for a, quote, every device can be an Xbox, end quote, approach. And, Rob's right. That is part of what's going on here. And we've talked, it's been outright said, I think, by members of the team that xCloud is meant to be the Netflix for games. Like, that's what Microsoft is literally going for. So Rob's on with this. And basically that Windows 10 PC can be, or Windows PC, doesn't even say Windows 10 PC. Windows PC can be effectively an Xbox, or can play, Xbox games meant for Xbox One. Yeah. We've been expecting this for a good long while, but I think, I get it that that's what's going on here, but I find this, it's conjecture on my part, but the idea that the Xbox is really, I think the Surface did well for a while. I don't know what Surface, any device within the Surface line, I don't know what kind of numbers they're running into. Also, we've had no release of HoloLens to this day. And there's no, it doesn't look like there's a release in sight, and we were coming up on 2020, and HoloLens was announced almost 2-3 years ago. Basically, Microsoft, selling hardware and software is a winning combo for a lot of the tech giants right now. And they all feel like they have to do it because that's what made Apple a ton of their money, even though ironically now Apple is trying to make money off of getting into the services end of things, right? But, Xbox is effectively looking to become a service as well with xCloud, okay? But it's interesting that I could see where, in fact, this is what we originally thought Project Scorpio was going to be, was that Project Scorpio, which ended up being like the Xbox One X, Project Scorpio, a lot of people were wondering, is this going to be like an actual Windows 10 gaming machine that's Xbox branded, can play Xbox games, and is just this fucking beast, that you could end up purchasing? I don't, a part of me wants to say, well, this is basically them saying that, we at Microsoft, the two things we don't do Windows, we do Xbox, and we do Office 365, because those are the two things that they make real money off of. They don't make money off of Windows anymore. This might be pointing somewhat in that direction, but I totally recognize that's conjecture on my part, and I don't have a whole lot to back that up, other than, where Microsoft clearly concentrates a lot of, business firepower, or a lot of development firepower, is, again, Office 365 and Xbox One, Xbox, whatever version it ends up taking. So I thought that was interesting. That's got to be the first time I've ever read it where where a PC was considered part of Windows PC specifically, was considered part of the Xbox One family. I've never seen that before. So that really struck out to me. Now, I'm a bit of a wrestling fan. Am I excited? I mean, we could just talk about this game. Am I excited for this game to come out? Absolutely. I kind of wish it was coming out for Switch, but I understand why it's not. Will I end up getting it for PC? Probably. There's a digital deluxe edition that will have Hulk Hogan in it, which he's just gotten back in the, shall we say, good graces of the WWE after, well, a certain fiasco. Then also China is going to be one of the unlockable wrestlers in this, which I don't think it's her first time in a game, but it's been the first time in a while. And ever since they did the 2K rebranding, it's probably been the first time, which I think that's very interesting. And boy, talk about a tragic story. But people know that I am a fan of, and you got to understand me, I am a fan of a very specific couple of eras of wrestling. Actually, let me take that back. I am a fan of the WWE Attitude Era, okay, which went from basically 2003 back to like 1996, 97, around there. And the NWO era of the WCW. Okay, but really everything from 2003 back in wrestling, I love. Like, I dig it. Even, I mean, you can go way back. You can go back to, Buddy Rogers days. I mean, go as far back as you fucking want. I am a fan. Now, modern wrestling, I couldn't give two shits about. Like, I pay attention to some of it, but I really don't care. And one only needs to look in the podcast space that most of the podcasts about wrestling are all retrospectives on the very era, that Attitude Era or the NWO era within WCW that I just referenced. And those podcasts are wildly popular because people they loved it so much. Everybody was watching, Stone Cold and The Rock and, Hollywood Hulk Hogan and all that. Everybody was so on top of that stuff that, yeah, you can get a huge audience just talking about what was going on in those days because everybody remembers them because everybody was fucking watching, or at least everybody in New York was. So I'm a big fan of wrestling. I do love, these are great games in and of themselves, whether you know a damn thing about the WWE or not, these types of games. So I'll jump on it. I'm glad Hulk Hogan's there. I'm a big Hulk Hogan fan, so I'm happy to, be able to play him again, as well. It'll be fun to play The Rock and all this. And I mean, it can be a really, really great time, but I'm going to have to get it on what I guess I'm looking at it right in front of me. I'm actually recording this on a Windows laptop right now. I guess this is an Xbox One. Who knew? So, so I'll be playing it on Xbox One. It's funny. I don't support the Xbox at all. I like the original Xbox. Then I think Microsoft really lost its vision after that. I'm not, I wouldn't call myself an Xbox, I don't know, fanboy or anything. I'm not supportive of the platform in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's fine if you're into it, but I couldn't care less about it. Yeah, I'm actually kind of annoyed that if I'm using a Windows PC, that basically, in Microsoft's eyes, I have an Xbox. And that makes me feel like I bought an Xbox, and I never want to buy an Xbox. I'm a guy who, at the moment, believes in voting with his dollar. I hate to think that I voted with my dollar that Xbox mattered, or that it's like even a worthwhile system. Oh well. Anyway, so but this game does look pretty cool, and definitely excited for that. And good on Becky Lynch for getting on the cover. I mean, seriously, I do think that's a great thing. Okay, so let's move on to another story here. But yeah, I bet you didn't know it. You have an Xbox. I'm just gonna bring this up quick. Nintendo Life, who's one of the better independent Nintendo news outlets out there. Of course, I wonder how independent they are. They have published, and they're not the only ones. Kotaku's done this. A whole slew of people have done this. This is a story from July 30th. Just about, almost literally a week ago, 2019. Here it is. Sorry, Nintendo, but the 3DS really is dead now. I've talked about this before. I am so sick and tired of, and I don't know where this came from. I don't know when this concept of why gamers feel like they have to declare systems dead. This is a completely new phenomenon. I've never seen it. I knew people that were still playing their Odyssey fucking 2 in the late 90s. And no one ever said to them, well, that system's dead. No, why? The guy's fucking playing it. It's still working, obviously. You want to talk about dead games. We're going to talk about dead games in a little bit. Like, what is the purpose to this? Like, why even, their subheader here is just 200,000 units sold in the last quarter. Look, folks, I have pre-ordered a Nintendo Switch. I am going to get a Nintendo Switch. I will be on the latest system. I will have a Nintendo Switch. I have no idea why me owning a Switch means that I can't play any other game system. Or that because I have that, now all other game systems are dead. This language blows my fucking mind. I don't get it. I mean, it's like it's a crime to own a 3DS. If you read a lot of these gaming journalists, it's like, what are they going to walk? This is like fucking high school. What are they going to do? Walk up to you and like, you're wearing Arizonas this year? You don't understand. Levi's are what's in this year. This is the most childish. Granted, I know a lot of people still think video games are childish. That's not true. But whatever. Because the average gamer is almost 40 years old. Including myself. I don't understand these stories. Why? What are these gaming journalists? And I've even tweeted at them, like, why are you doing this? And they it's just crickets. They give you no response as to why they are so hard up on just saying the 3DS is dead, the 3DS is dead, the 3DS is dead. Are they, what? Is this some kind of like reverse psychology by Nintendo? Because Nintendo's saying, look, we're going to support it as long as it sells, which is a great fucking attitude, right? I wish more companies would be fucking supportive of their consoles until, for decades, quite frankly. I really do. But is this like Nintendo saying, well, we really don't want to support it, so we're going to say we're going to support it just to try and sell out our stock to parents who are going to buy them for their little kids at the low, low price of whatever, okay? But, all of you gaming rags, we want you to actually tell them, oh, it's dead, don't bother with it. That way, sooner or later, we can stop supporting it, and we can point at all these stories and tell our investors, hey, the gaming community said this thing's fucking dead. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Okay, so last quarter, only 200,000 units sold. Woohoo! Why is this even news? I don't even think the Wii U got this treatment. Like, I don't remember Nintendo Life. And look, that's one where you could easily make an argument for the entire life of the system. Nobody cared. I skipped the system, and I'm one of the biggest Nintendo fanboys in the world. Okay, I completely skipped the Wii U. I didn't give a shit. I'm like, no, this is too much like the Wii. I'll wait for the next system, thank you very much. And that's exactly what I did. But I rocked the 3DS the whole time because I still want my Nintendo fix, goddammit. But I don't recall ever seeing stories like this so much by gaming journalism that, oh, the Wii U is dead, the Wii U is dead. When you could easily argue that the Wii U is dead, that's another thing that was DOA. It was dead on arrival. There's great games on it. I'm not saying it wasn't a good system. It just, if we're going to argue the way they are about the 3DS, let's call a spade a spade. The Xbox 360, nobody is out there saying, I don't see the stories that say the Xbox 360 is finally truly dead. Why? With those systems, sure, they're so reliant upon their internet connections that, they could eventually die. There's a reason I keep a fucking PS2, because, in fact, this is going to lead into another story. This is the part where it's not sunshine and rainbows. But, I keep a PlayStation 2 because it's a system that just, it doesn't care what happens to the world around it, and you can keep playing it, and the games are fucking amazing. And they really are. I don't get it. What is the hard on? Again, like I said, I feel like In fact, it makes me want to hold on to my 3DS even more because I love the feeling of being, dangerous and being a criminal. And I feel like I'm somehow like I'm some bastard of society because I own a 3DS and I still pick it up and power it on. What is the deal? And fuck, if anybody listening to the sound of my voice has a friend who's a gaming journalist, feed me the info. You can be anonymous. Give me the reason why. I gotta know, why are you so fucking hard up about declaring this thing dead? No other system. The Commodore 64 never got treated as dead, even though the NES was outselling it left and right all around the world. I've never seen this before. Nobody was even, with the Sega Saturn. I never heard any. I mean, the Sega Saturn, was a failure. It's a great system. It's a great system. It has great games that everybody should be playing. We're probably going to talk about that a little bit later. But nobody was ever saying, oh, yeah, I mean, there was never anything in like EGM or GamePro saying, oh, the Sega Saturn's dead, blah, blah. I mean, like, that lingo just didn't exist. I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. And fuck Nintendo Life for it. I mean, frankly, because like they've done this over and over again. They've been particularly egregious about it. And yeah, screw them. So anyway, now to talk about a real problem, a very real problem, and where something actually is dead. Look, it's dead when you can't actually fucking play it. That's when something's dead. Well, here's a story from Android Police from just today as of this recording. Square Enix will shut down Star Ocean Anamnesis? I'm guessing what a weird ass name. That's okay. Star Ocean series has always had weird nomenclature. Anamnesis on November 5th. Anyway, the version of Star Ocean, I guess for Android, and I imagine it came out for iOS as well, is going to be getting shut down on November 5th. Let me read a little bit of the story here. It's been a little over a year. Stallion breaking in. Pay attention to that time. It's been a little over a year since Square Enix released Star Ocean Anamnesis in the West, and it would appear that the collection-based RPG hasn't been doing that well. Early this morning, Square Enix announced on Twitter that it will shutter the game on November 5th. In-app purchases are already disabled, though the game will remain playable for free up until the announced shutdown date. The above image, there's an image here. The above image details the closing date for Star Ocean Anamnesis, the removal of the title's in-app purchases, and thanks fans for playing the game. While I would imagine this announcement may come as a surprise to some, it would appear that there are few reviews on the Play Store that notice Square's recent lack of interest in the game, so I suppose the warning signs were there if you were looking closely. Of course, those that sunk a lot of money into the title, that's Stanley breaking in, that's a key point right there. Those that sunk a lot of money into the title will lose access to all of their content once the game's servers are closed in November. But hey, doesn't it make you feel better knowing that Square thanked everyone while slinking away with all of your hard work? I suppose, reading on with the story, I suppose it's a natural path for free-to-play games to disappear if they are not earning optimally for a developer, though the time frame in this case is a little too short for comfort. Again, just over a year. This English version is barely a year old, and now that we know it will be removed soon, I have to question Square's commitment to the rest of its free-to-play catalog. Okay, so the key thing here is they bring it up. Again, those that sunk a lot of money into the title will lose access to all of their content once the game's servers are closed in November. All right, now that's a dead game. You can't play it anymore. You can't install it. You don't get to buy shit that helps you get past the grind or whatever the fuck happens in this game. I really like Star Ocean Second Story. Phenomenal. Talk about a great PS2 game. Okay. I really, really like the Star Ocean series. Big fan. Right up there with, the Secrets of Mana series, that series got kind of funny when it got to the PS2, but Legend of Mana was cool. And plenty others, Dragon Quest, go down the list. But I don't think I've ever talked about this on Gaming Grid. I've brought it up many times on Sovereign Tech. Okay, now I have my own game company, okay, which is Zomia Offline Games. And unlike some other people, I literally make my own games. I do not hire a service, okay, that will just put my label on the game put in my little, look, folks, there's companies that do this. They will make a game for you. They'll tailor make a game. I mean, they won't tailor the gameplay. They'll put your characters and your story perhaps in it, and then they'll just put in some simple puzzles and shit like this. I mean, these are very real. You can pay them to do it. It's not cheap, but you can pay them to do it, and then you can go out there and sell the game and act like you made it or something. And the gaming world is not the only place that this happens. This also happens in the hardware space, like with making phones. There are plenty of companies out there that put phones out that they don't have a production facility for the phone. Okay, they just hire like Oppo or some other companies who make the phone for them and put on their various little, unique bits into the phone that they hired them to make for them. This isn't like how Apple hires Foxconn. These are literally like you hire vanity services to make phones for you, and then you resell them like they're yours. What's that? There's a camera company. I think it's Red or something. They do this. I mean, it's really fucking insane. Anyway. You want to talk about things that boggle my mind. That you would put your money into a game that you will never actually own and that you can't play 20 years from now. And fuck you know it, that you still play games from 20 years ago because you can see the sales numbers on the Switch for the Sega Ages games, for the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection. Go down the list of all these classic games that are getting re-released on modern consoles. Games that some of them are 30 years old or more, and they do exceptionally well. You're not going to get that. Why you would buy a game where you didn't have even the potential to play this shit 30 years later is mind-boggling to me. But that is the very nature of any game or just about any game that has in-app purchases or is part of this like free-to-play model. Now, I understand because I have acquaintances and friends who are in the mobile game space. They are developers, and they make it very clear that to be able to afford to develop these games, to even, be able to hire the developers to do all this, games have to make millions of dollars or you don't make it back. You don't make it back on the development costs or on the licensing costs and all this. They have to make a shit ton of money to keep the doors open on these games. But I don't think there's a game out there. Even World of Warcraft is running into problems. I don't think there's a game out there that can keep that model going. And eventually, you have to turn off the servers. Now, a classic example of that doesn't mean you can't use this model, okay? Because this is the same model free-to-play is just a smaller scale version of MMOs, like World of Warcraft, right? Now, there was if you remember, there was the Matrix Online, okay, which is a Matrix game Sony put out there that was an MMO, okay, that everybody could play online. Eventually, they shut down servers. Now, they didn't open up the code or anything, which would have been kind of perfect for a Matrix game, but, based upon the Matrix movies, right? But they did do something right, where because this game, part of its selling point was that it was a canon continuation by the Wachowski brothers, the Wachowskis. I don't mean any disrespect by that. The Wachowskis, it's not brothers anymore, and I think that's great, okay? But the Wachowskis, to get more of that story, that was one of the selling points for for rocking the Matrix Online. What they did is that when they ended the game, free to everybody. Now, this isn't exactly optimal, but it's better than nothing. Free to everybody, they released what they called the Matrix Online. It was like the Matrix Online scrapbook. And basically, it was a PDF that you could download, it's still out there, that you can download, where you can read all of the events that happened. Not everything that every little player ever did, but all of the storyline, matters within the Matrix Online, and everybody could read it, and you could read it into perpetuity, and you could keep the canon going, and you knew what went down. I mean, I'd love to see like a lot of the cinematic sequences that they made for the game. I'd love to see those available and so on. But that's great. That's the way to do it. Fine. You're not going to open up the code. You're not going to keep servers running. At least give something for people to remember the game by, or ways to experience it, especially when it's something so tied so closely to a larger franchise. Now, I mean, I don't know how this game tied in with, the rest of the Star Ocean franchise as far as this one goes, but that's a way to do it. I can't really think of any other MMO, though, that has really done that. I imagine if the day ever comes where World of Warcraft shuts down, that they might do something like that, and that's going to be one hell of a fucking epic read, and I would read it, I'll tell you, because, I mean, I am a fan. Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3, huge fans. I'm a huge fan. Huge fan. In fact, where's Warcraft 3 Reforged? I pre-ordered that, like, over a year ago. Or something. Oh, whatever. Anyway. I know this was a while ago that I pre-ordered that. Anyway, moving on from that. So, what I want to just express to you, because I don't think I've ever talked about this on the Gaming Grid, do not fall for these games. In fact, if anything, speaking of voting with your dollar, I think it behooves us as gamers to vote with our dollar that this is a way of selling games that we are not interested in. But it leads to, again, the modern game, just they have the most ridiculous budgets. I don't know how exactly to solve this, where we teach, these game dev houses the lesson of, look, stop making games that just have all these little, in-app purchases and loot and all this other crap to just like try and trick more and more money out of gamers. We understand as gamers that you need to make that much money. You need to pull those dirty tricks to be able to afford to make a profit off of these games that you make. But then basically somehow we got to tell them, stop making games like this. Just stop. And I don't know how that happens. I don't know what it would take for that to come to reality. I'd love for you to email me if you want and talk about it. Give me your thoughts on the matter. But basically, yeah, I mean, this is the nature. Every single free-to-play game ever is going to fall to this. Really. I mean, I don't know, I guess except for maybe Candy Crush or something. But anything that has any kind of way, I mean, it's going to happen. Nintendo has even canceled some of their free-to-play stuff. Remember, what was it? Mii's? Not Miitomo. Or was it Miitomo? Anyway, whatever. I used it forever. I mean, I was fucking in on it, man. Because I figured, you know what I thought? I was like, well, okay, yeah, a lot of these little companies will shut down their free-to-play apps. But Nintendo, they've got all the money to spread around forever. They'll keep this shit going. What I didn't count on wasn't that not that Nintendo didn't have the money. Yeah, I think it was Miitomo. Because Miitopia was the 3DS game. That's what had me confused. Not that Nintendo couldn't keep Miitomo going, not that they couldn't afford that, but basically they backpedaled away from the concept of Mii's, MII. Like they ran away from that, and that's why they ended up shutting it down. But that's my point, is that Square Enix will shut these games down, Nintendo will shut these games down. This is a model that can't sustain itself. And I think you're just throwing away money, literally throwing it away, because you won't be able to play it anymore or access anymore. There's no emulators for this. You just can't do it. You are throwing away money if you buy into like this whole free-to-play model. So anyway, if you have thoughts on that, though, bbs@sovereigntech.com, and you can tell me if you have a differing opinion. I'd love to hear it. As far as with free-to-play games and putting in for in-app purchases and all that. Okay, let's get on to another subject for this episode. In fact, I guess with that, after talking about that, you know what I didn't talk about? No, I'm going to save this. I have a conversation. It has to actually do with the WWE. But I'm going to save that conversation for a Zomia 1 Underground Q&A. So it won't be on the Gaming Grid. It'll be on the Q&A for all the shows that are on Zomia 1. I'm going to talk about it there. But I have a point that I want to get into. It has to do with Twitter and the WWE. It doesn't really fit in with Gaming Grid, so it's probably just as well that I didn't talk about it. So instead, we'll get into that list that I teased at the beginning or at the top of the episode of the 15 from GameSpot, the 15 console games from the 90s you need to play again right now. So let's talk about it. Now, let's be clear here. There are some problems with this list, particularly that I don't think all of these are console games, and they should not be in this list. Also, understand, the 90s is really a golden era of gaming. The 90s, the NES in 91 was still hot shit. Game Boy is technically a console. I don't think there's a Game Boy game on here. And that had some of the greatest games ever made on any system come out in the 90s. This is also the era of the SNES, but it's also the era of the N64. You had multiple Sega systems that were dominating in the 90s. This is to only pick out 15 games. I mean, this is in my opinion, out of any decade, even the aughts or to today, there is no other era where there would be more games to revisit and play and rock than the 90s. I mean, it was a magical fucking time. So this is kind of a weird list to bring up anyway, but you can understand the breadth of systems that you would, that you could play on, and what games are out there to play. So we're just going to start going down this list, and basically at the end of it, I'm going to give you games that I think from the 90s, and it's not going to be 15, but I'll give you a few that I think people should replay, and that, well, I kind of have a point to get to with it. But regardless, I'll just say yay or nay whether or not you should still play these. The first one, these aren't in any specific order, I don't think, but the first couple might be. Their first game that they say you should try is Super Mario 64. And this was for the Nintendo 64, of course, because 64 is in the title. I totally agree. This is a game that still plays beautifully to this day. The version for the Nintendo DS, which is Super Mario 64 DS, is easily the best version of this game. It adds so much to it, and it's easy to get your hands on. It's not expensive at all. And if you have a 3DS, even though people keep fucking telling you that system's dead, though for some reason GameSpot in the same goddamn breath will tell you should play these games again from the 90s. I mean, and luckily you can, because if you wanted to play Star Ocean and a Nemesis, whatever the fuck, you're not going to be able to 20 years from now, like you can with, this list from the 1990s. That should bring you pause. I don't know, maybe modern gamers just don't care, and they have, do you have that kind of disposable income? That part about free-to-play games boggles my mind too. But anyway, getting your hands on and playing Super Mario 64 DS is not an expensive proposition in any way, shape, or form. And again, that is the best way to play Super Mario 64. This is definitely a game that should be replayed, and anybody can pick up and have a great time with it. It's such a brilliantly designed game. It really brought 3D gaming to fore once again. And again, it still plays great to this day. Number 2 on the list is Final Fantasy VII. Now, there is a huge remake of this, like a full-on remake of this coming out. Is it this year? Later in 2019? Or very soon, anyway. It's been re-released on many, many systems over the years. This is another one where basically whatever you've got in your hand or nearby, you could probably end up playing it on. This is one of the all-time greats, no doubt. Should you replay it? If you've never played it, definitely play it. If you have played it, it's certainly worthwhile to play again. The story, while tragic and somewhat depressing, is brilliant. I mean, this is one of the, its reputation is deserved. It's one of the greatest games of all time. Amazing music, amazing story, amazing gameplay, amazing action. When you start pulling out Knights of the Round, that it's on. And the Chocobo racing, all that stuff. So cool. Just a fantastic game. Though I would argue also, any Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX, all of those are worthwhile to replay. Every Final Fantasy game, even Final Fantasy I, is worth a replay, in my opinion. Don't just stick with Final Fantasy VII, though this certainly does. Its reputation, again, is well earned. Number 3, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo. This is one that is on the SNES Classic. You can also get it for the 3DS. You cannot play it on a Switch. But there's plenty of systems where this is, you're able to play it. For some people, this is still considered the greatest Zelda game of all time. It's usually argued between this one and Ocarina of Time, which is another game that is well worth replaying. And actually, its best version is on the 3DS, and it is a significantly, you wouldn't think that game could get any better. There is so much more added into the 3DS version, as well as for Majora's Mask. It's well worth your time to play it on a 3DS. But Link to the Past, yeah, absolutely. This is a totally timeless game that you can replay over and over again, and it's tremendous. Next one, Metal Gear Solid from 1998. Yeah, sure. A great game. The Metal Gear Solid series, while later on gets a little crazy, certainly had a lot of fun with its initial forays. And Metal Gear Solid is, again, a total classic. And fuck, you can go pick up a PlayStation Classic for $20, and I think it's on there. So have a good time. But great game. Another one, Resident Evil from 1996. That's another PlayStation Classic game. This game does not hold up well. In fact, I think its controls are a little clunky. You can play an updated version with gorgeous, gorgeous graphics on it that I recommend trying out. But the classic control scheme is still there. I mean, yeah, play it. And I love the Resident Evil series, and I really do. But I don't know that this is one you want to like replay through. If you're going to do the updated version, though, seeing like the hokey full motion video from the original version of the game might be worth a few laughs. I don't know. So I don't necessarily agree that this is one you have to play again, but whatever. Anyway, they're getting me talking about these games. That's the whole point of a listicle, like I said at the top of the show. So I'm talking about them, but whatever. That's one that I don't necessarily think you need to replay. Number 6 is a cheat. This is an absolute cheat. This should not be on this list at all. And it's Half-Life from 1998. Now, here's the thing. This is the top 15 console games from the 90s. Yes, Half-Life came out in 1998, but it came out for PC in 1998. It wouldn't come out on a console, the PlayStation 2, until like 2001. And the PlayStation 2 version, while I think is actually a superior version in many ways to what came out for the PC and was very much redone, that's a worthwhile play. I'm not going to say it's not. But at the same time, this, it's not a 90s game. It came out in 2001. This should not be on this list. They really, really cheated with this one because it did not exist on consoles in the 90s. And I don't know, GameSpot just looks stupid for including it. This is a PC game through and through. I don't think most people even think about the console version of it when they think about Half-Life. It's a great game, no doubt, worth a play. It doesn't, I'll tell you, I don't think the first Half-Life holds up as well as Ex Machina or Deus Ex, right? I don't think it holds up as well as Deus Ex does, but it's still pretty good. So, yeah, you could try it out, but let's be clear here, this isn't a console game. Moving on, GoldenEye 007 for the N64 from 1997. This is another one where, if we're honest with ourselves, does not hold up very well. But you better believe everybody and their mother was playing this, the multiplayer of it, over and over and over again. Many a couch was destroyed. You can hear Ellen behind me. She's like, oh yeah. Many a couch, because she did it too, many a couch was destroyed playing this game in multiplayer. And, it was everybody watching everybody else's screen to see where they were hiding and everything. You bet your ass they were. But what a great time that was. GoldenEye, I played it endlessly. At the time, I was certainly a big James Bond fan. And, that got me in front of it in the first place, but then the multiplayer was just so fucking awesome. Even though, PCs were doing multiplayer, like I was doing multiplayer with Doom and Rise of the Triad, years before this was a thing. GoldenEye just made the multi-screen on a single screen for a first-person shooter a thing. That's really what it did. If you want to play this, there was actually a version for the Wii, which I think got re-released for other systems. Maybe it was on the PS4, on the PS3 or the PS4. But the Wii did a remake of GoldenEye, almost pound for pound. But they put in Daniel Craig in it, and it was really well done. In fact, I think I still have my Wii Pro controller. That was a gold controller that came with it if you bought GoldenEye for the Wii. And that certainly has significantly updated graphics and so on, and it's a lot. Anyway, the multiplayer still works really well on that. The other game, though, that I'd recommend is actually GoldenEye Rogue Agent for PS2. That game has a multiplayer that totally borrows from the N64 GoldenEye game, and that is a much better way, in my opinion, to play GoldenEye multiplayer is to actually play it on Rogue Agent. But certainly there's something to be said for playing the classic. And I mean, the GoldenEye game for the N64 single player was still great. I mean, you were playing the movie basically, but it was still awesome. But yeah, so that's on the list. Okay, that makes sense. Let's get to the next one. Next one is Soul Calibur for the Dreamcast. And Soul Calibur is one of those rare games. It gets brought up a lot on list of greatest console games because it was originally an arcade game. The amazing thing is that while it was originally an arcade game, and especially in the 90s, you have to understand that a lot of console versions of arcade games would come out. But you generally expected, unless it was Neo Geo, you generally expected the console version of the game to be, for the graphics to be dumbed down a bit, for certain features to just not be there. The amazing thing is that the Dreamcast version of Soul Calibur, which is a two-person fighter with weapons, it's a classic series now. I think Soul Calibur 6 just came out this year. But Soul Calibur looked better on the Dreamcast than it did in the arcades. That was unheard of at the time. And I mean, it literally looked better. It had way more game modes. I mean, it had so much more going for it. Easily one of the greatest games of all time. It could sit in my top 10 list of greatest games of all time. I mean, it really, really could. Soul Calibur is amazing. Now, you had Soul Blade, which Soul Calibur is a sequel to. Soul Blade was a PlayStation 1 game, also an arcade game. And that's, in my opinion, Soul Blade is just as solid as Soul Calibur. So playing either one of those and replaying them really, really works. I mean, and these are gorgeous fighting games, arguably the most gorgeous fighting games ever. I mean, they are just stunning. Just pick a guy with the nunchucks and away you go. In Soul Calibur, it was Maxi. In Soul Blade, it was Li Long. Wolf, or is it Wolf? Was that it? No, wait, Wolf is the guy from Virtua Fighter. I'm thinking of Rock. Rock is like the caveman character. That guy is so cool. I love playing him. Either of those games are going to do you well. So yeah, that's a fine inclusion to have on this list. Shenmue from 99. This is a game that came out for one of the, I guess basically I think it was a launch title for Dreamcast. This is a game series that's finally getting some love basically 20 years later. Shenmue is an amazing, kind of third person perspective, sort of real-time RPG. I love the game. Definitely the story in it is amazing. And it was always planned to have more games in it. It would take forever. It wouldn't take until the last couple of years until we'd really finally get like a lot of conclusion with that story. If you've never played Shenmue 1, jump on it. It's definitely worthwhile. Number 10, Mario Kart 64. Oh yeah. From 97. Yeah, absolutely. Mario Kart 64 is a stunning game to this day. Maybe the best version of Mario Kart ever made I would give it to, was Double Dash the one? I think Double Dash is the one for GameCube. That's phenomenal. In fact, I might have picked up a GameCube just to be able to play that again because it's so good. Mario Kart 64, yeah, that's a worthwhile one to jump back on. A lot of people consider that one to be the best entry in the series, and really everything else has just been a lot of added flourish since then. I think that argument could kind of be made. But regardless, Mario Kart is always a good time no matter what system you happen to play it on. In fact, Mario Kart 7, I think to this day, is still the best-selling game on the Nintendo 3DS. And it is a great game on there. I still play it, every once in a while on it as well. So let's go on to number 11, Diablo. Funny thing, did Diablo even come out? Maybe it came out for PlayStation? Nobody thinks, this is another one of those ones where maybe it came out for a console, but nobody thinks about Diablo as a console game. At least I don't think so. This is a game that really wants a mouse. It's a great game. In fact, it's selling very well. This came out in 96. Over 20 years later, it is selling exceptionally well on GOG for PC. I mean, it's been consistently in their top selling games. And I think they finally put it back out 2-3 months ago, maybe even longer. It's consistently stayed in their top-selling games on GOG. Why? Because, yeah, it's a great game. Okay? Keep in mind, though, this is a game that, thankfully, you can play, 20 some odd years later. Thankfully. But it is that good. Diablo 2, of course, would even get better. But anyway, Diablo, yeah, rock and roll. That's a great pick. Even though, again, I don't think anybody would think about it for PC. Chrono Trigger. from 1995. This is, of course, for the SNES. One of the greatest RPGs of all time. Totally worth replaying again. There's modern re-releases of this that I've heard varying problems with the emulation, as well as like just the controls and gameplay in general. I can't really speak to any of that. This is something that was available. This is on the SNES Classic, right? This is something that, where you can play it. It's totally worth it. I also like the sequel, Chrono Cross, for the PlayStation. I think that's worthwhile as well. 13, Parasite Eve. Woo! I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but yes, play this for PlayStation. Totally. Sonic the Hedgehog, of course, the classic. Funny thing about Sonic the Hedgehog, I actually think the 8-bit games, and I've said this many times, I think the 8-bit games are better than the 16-bit games from back in the day. But you're not going to go wrong. Whatever Sonic you play, you're going to have a good time, in my opinion. And I really think that. So, yeah, this is one that's certainly worth a revisit. Let's go to number 15, then I'll get into a little bit of my gaming picks. Number 15 is Doom. Another one where, Doom has basically been released for everything, and people have put it on every fucking device from an Apple Watch to toasters, I'm sure. No one thinks about this as a console game. I think this is kind of stupid to include this on a list of console games. Doom has recently gotten a re-release. In fact, this might be on here because id Software did do a re-release of it on Switch, PS4. They did the entire original trilogy. The thing is that playing those games, well, there's problems with the re-releases that have happened, like on Switch, where there's some really ugly DRM involved with them. Really, really ugly. But, a game that we've reviewed recently on the Gaming Grid is Sigil, which is a new level for the original Doom by John Romero himself. You're not going to be able to do that on consoles. And I think that sucks. So, this is not something that you'd want to consider a console game at all. I find it very, very odd that that's included here in a list of console games from the 90s to replay. I think it's totally worth a replay. I think it's a great game. You pop it in GZ Doom and have the time. And it is an awesome game to this day. But I wouldn't include it in a list of console games. So, anyway, again, I think GameSpot cheated here. Half-Life does not belong on that list because it was not a console game until unquestionably after the 1990s, but whatever. It's just a game list, so who cares? Should you still replay it? Yeah, sure. Same with Doom. But I'm going to give you a few games here, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. Not that they weren't released for console, or that they weren't console originally, okay, or something that would, be more thought of as a PC game, but basically they kind of fall in a funny year, like maybe 1990 or the year 2000. In fact, let me open this one up with this game is reason alone to own a Dreamcast. And the game is Power Stone 2. This is a fighting game. Very unique, very interesting levels that you fight on. Some of them are moving. It's really, really crazy. But because the Dreamcast was a system that allowed for 4 players right with the system as is, just like the N64 was, the multiplayer capabilities are through the roof on this one. This is 4-player fighting action that you just don't get any. Thrill Kill could do it, that we mentioned earlier, but you really don't get this kind of action anywhere else. Power Stone 1 is a worthwhile game too, but Power Stone 2 is Power Stone 1 on steroids. Only on the Dreamcast. Fuck, is it a great game. It is a great fucking game. To this day, the graphics still look cute and fun. Not cute. Cute after a fashion. Okay, it's not cute in other ways. It's just kind of anthropomorphized a bit. But anyway, yeah, Power Stone 2, totally. I don't know why. I don't think there's ever been a Power Stone 3, which is weird because it's such a well-regarded series with only a couple games to its name. But okay. So that's one that I think from the 90s that's worthwhile replaying, even though technically, again, it came out in the year 2000. Starblade Alpha, there's my next one. This was a game that was originally an arcade game, I believe. Then it ended up, Namco ported it to the PlayStation. If you can figure out a way to play this, you are in for a hell of a time. It's not a long game. It's hard, but it is basically an on-rail shooter. Looks kind of like Star Fox. But I don't want to say it's a superior game to Star Fox because Star Fox brings so much class and action and unique action to it. But I think that Starblade Alpha is just a tremendous rail shooter that should not be missed. And a rarer game for the PlayStation, but that people that know, that are in the scene, are like, yeah, this is one of the best games you can play on the system. And I agree that it is. So definitely want to check out Starblade Alpha, one of my favorite games of all time. In fact, speaking of, well, I don't really want to talk about Star Fox, but, if you could play Star Fox 2, does that classify as a 2017 game? Or a 2018 game? Or is that something from the 90s? Where should we put that? Anyway, I don't want to get a conversation around Star Fox. But Star Fox 64, which is a 90s game, that's another one where well worth a play. The 3DS version added in so much. Play it that way. You won't be disappointed with Star Fox 64. That's a 90s game to revisit. That's a great time. Nights into Dreams. This was a launch title basically for the Sega Saturn. This is one of those games why I want a Sega Saturn Mini to come out from Sega next year. We're getting the Sega Genesis Mini this year. 2020, give us the Sega Saturn Mini. We need it. We want it. In fact, I did a poll on Twitter with Gaming Grid listeners, and just about all of you said you'd buy one. Everybody that voted on it, I think there's one person who said they wouldn't, which, okay. But everybody else is like, no, I want one, and we need it. So Nights into Dreams, different than Super Mario 64, but the flight mechanics for it, mixed in with gameplay very similar to Super Mario 64, makes it an instant winner. I love this game. Anyway, so hopefully one day we get a Sega Saturn Mini where it's easy for you to play it. Otherwise, you have to buy a Phantom modded Sega Saturn to be able to do this, and that can be a pain in the ass. But maybe you want to do that, because another game that I'm going to recommend to you on my own personal list is Panzer Dragoon Saga. Now, you could play all the Panzer Dragoon games on Saturn, and you're going to be in for a great time, and they're all worthwhile going back and replaying. Panzer Dragoon Saga is a game unlike any other. Very unique combat system. It adds in a lot of RPG elements to the Panzer Dragoon series, which is also sort of an on-rails shooter, or very similar to Star Fox. I think it could have been a Star Fox killer, but the Saturn never really took off. The original Panzer Dragoon was a launch title for the Saturn. It sold me on it, but I guess it didn't sell a whole lot of other people on the system. But Panzer Dragoon Saga, a very hard game to emulate. It's really something you got to play on a system. It is on the actual console. It is one that I think Sega would, I think they'd move a few 100,000 units of a Sega Saturn Mini just by having this game on there. And it's not like they have to patch it, to have an English translation. It was released in America. This is a tremendous, tremendous game. If you have the capability, if you want to put down the money to get like a modded Sega Saturn, or do whatever you have to do to make this, for you to be able to play it, I guarantee it's worth your while. This is one of the greatest games of all time. So Panzer Dragoon Saga, put that there. Next one. This is one you don't have to put down a ton of money on. But Pretty Soldier Sailor Moon R. Yes, a Sailor Moon game. This is actually one for the SNES. You can get an English patch version of this game. This is one, it's a beat-em-up game. I love beat-em-up games like Streets of Rage. You think like Turtles in Time. Go down the list of them. I think they're all fantastic. Or a lot of them are fantastic. Not all of them are great, but a lot of them are fantastic. But I think Sailor Moon R is one of the better beat-em-ups ever made. And it was originally for the SNES. There's a lot of Sailor Moon games that came out, including one for the Sega Saturn, that was tremendous. But this is one that's easily accessible for people. So you can find the English patch, and it's very well done, and it is just a lot of fun. Get a buddy in on it, and you're in for a great time. Of course, people know me. I'm a big Sailor Moon fan. Anyway, the last one, I'll make this the last one because we're running a little bit long, and I want to wrap this baby up. The last one is, there's two different ways I've heard this pronounced. Some people say Crystallis. Other people say Crystallis, and it is crystal, so I think Crystallis makes sense, but I hear most people say Crystallis. This is a great RPG, very interesting in that you are dealing in a world. Okay, you basically wake up out of this like a cryo chamber. Hundreds or thousands of years later, after some nuclear holocaust, and you're in this world where there's magic and all this other stuff. The storyline is phenomenal. The gameplay is great. This is a game that's actually available in the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection, available for the Nintendo Switch. And it's one of the reasons that that game will be one of my first buys, is the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection, because, just to play this alone, I would do that. I think that this game can fetch a modern price of anywhere between $30 to $60 on its own. For it to be part of a gigantic SNK collection just makes it all the sweeter. So it's a game that you can play on a modern system that you can get your hands on. But I think this is one of the best RPGs you'll ever play. The graphics, the NES graphics for it are still charming, and work very, very well. It is a very mature and grown-up story, especially for the time. It was one of the later games for the NES in its later life. Basically, this game and like Mega Man 6 were what were why people were holding on, I think, very much to their NES as far as new games go. That doesn't mean the NES was ever dead. In fact, it's still not dead. I don't know how many people have to be doing speed runs and whatever fucking, Super Mario Brothers games they're playing, or Super Mario Brothers 3 for that matter. But regardless, this is something that kept people, really rocking the NES for a long time after what I guess now gaming journalists would call dead, but even though it wasn't. Tremendous RPG. You've got to play it. Don't do the Game Boy Color version. Even though there's stuff added to that, the screen resolution for the Game Boy creates a real problem where there are enemies that can attack you off screen that you don't see. And that makes it kind of unplayable. So don't bother with the Game Boy version, but rock the NES version. If you want to do the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection, that's a way to go. This is a game well worth your time. The story is awesome. Far better than any... I wish there was more to the series, because it's... I mentioned a bunch earlier. Star Ocean, the Mana series, Breath of Fire, Dragon Quest, just go down the list of them. Final Fantasy, all of them. I think Crystalis, whatever you want to call it, could have been the better series than all of those, and that game alone is better than any game out of any of those series, as great as those are. So anyway, check out Crystalis if you haven't. There's my little list to kind of add into it. But those 15 games, yeah, I think they're all worth checking out. Though Resident Evil, that's the one where it's, I don't know about that. But boy, Parasite Eve, you got to do it. Anyway, we'll wrap up the gaming grid with this. September, next month, you are in for a real treat, because I will be reviewing both the Switch Lite as well as the Sega Genesis Mini, because I'm going to be on top of both of those, and I cannot wait. So anyway, I'll sign off on this one. Woo! This is the gaming grid, and I'll see all of you on the other side.
Game over.